This is the interview for Module 4, Capstone Project, Sir Arthur Eddington's solar eclipse. First question. Tell us your name and tell us about your project. Hi, my name is Ryan Fort, and the project I'm working on is solar eclipse observations led by Sir Arthur Eddington. What we are trying to do is prove Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity by testing one of the critical tests, deflection of light by a gravitational force. We are testing this by examining the way light acts with a total solar eclipse. Second question. What were you guys trying to do or find? We are trying to test Einstein's general theory of relativity by using the solar eclipse and measurements we took to see if light does indeed tend to have a slightly larger bend as opposed to a smaller bend about half the size that was proven by Newton earlier on. Question 3. Where did this project or experiment occur? Eddington began by taking nighttime baseline measurements of the position of the stars in the Hyades cluster throughout January and February in 1919. In May, Eddington went to the remote island of Principe, which is off of the coast of Africa, to measure the stars' positions during the eclipse as viewed through the sun's gravitational lens. Eddington also sent a group of astronomers, including myself, to take measurements from a place in Brazil, in case the eclipse was blocked for either group by clouds. The eclipse occurred on May 29, 1919, and that's when we did our measurements. Question 4. What other significant events were happening around the world at this time? There was a lot of events happening in the year 1919. For example, in January 5th, the National Socialist Party was founded in Germany. On January 15th, there was the Great Molasses Flood in Massachusetts. Down in February 23rd, the Fascist Party is founded in Italy by Benito Mussolini. Further down, in March 30th, Gandhi announced resistance against the Rowlatt Act. And one final thing that happened was, on June 4th, U.S. Congress passed the Women's Suffrage Bill, the 19th Amendment. Question 5. Who else was involved in the project? As I mentioned earlier, besides Arthur Eddington himself, who was the leader, a small group of other astronomers, myself included, were working and assisted Eddington. Another astronomer, Sir Frank Watson Dyson, an astronomer royal of Britain, was the person responsible for the idea of using the solar eclipse to test Einstein's theory of relativity. There were a few delays because of World War I happening, and besides that, we were able to carry out the experiment that Dyson laid out. Question 6. What was your role in the project? My role was working with the other astronomers in Brazil to measure the stars during the eclipse, as a backup for Eddington in case clouds block his view. The reason we were measuring while the eclipse was happening was because during the eclipse the sun would cross the Hyades cluster and the starlight would be visible. If we compare the baseline measurements that Eddington took previously in January and February to what we just measured now during the eclipse, we would be able to finally determine whether Newton was right or whether Einstein's new theory was right about how much light bends. Our results were similar to Eddington's, and so we had the answer we were looking for. Question 7. What impact did your project have on the physics community? The big impact of the project was confirming Einstein's general theory of relativity, as well as turning Einstein from a fairly unknown theoretical physicist to a worldwide sensation. Together, our teams were able to disprove the widely accepted Newtonian theory that light only has a slight bend to it by finding that light has a bend about double the size as Einstein described it. Question 8. What did you learn from your research on this topic? I learned a lot about Einstein's general theory of relativity and how Eddington was able to measure the stars and use a total solar eclipse in order to prove Einstein right. It was very interesting to learn so much about a topic I didn't know a lot about. Another thing that I learned was preparation is very important, because that was a problem that they met with a lot during their research. Because Eddington was prepared, he had 2 teams in case clouds were a problem or weather was a problem. But the team in Brazil, we experienced difficulty with the heat because it caused some of our larger telescopes to malfunction, and so we were prepared enough to have smaller telescopes that still worked, but just not as well as they could have. So preparation is something that I learned is very important, especially when performing research. And those are the interview questions for Module 4 Capstone Project, all about Sir Arthur Eddington's solar eclipse observations.